channel. Today I'm back with 3 new patriotic decor DIYs. I'd ask you guys in one of my last videos if you'd like to see more patriotic themed decor here on my channel, and most of you did. So today I'm showing you 3 new projects that are all super easy and budget friendly. All 3 DIYs are more rustic farmhouse style, so if you're into that style, then I really think that you'll enjoy today's video. If you do, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Now let's get right into today's DIYs. For DIY number 1, I'm going to be making a framed flag. For this project, I used a 4x6 canvas from Dollar Tree, Waverly chalk paint in plaster, folk art chalk paint in imperial, nautical, and also in the color Java, paintbrushes, Craftsmart wood stain in brown, a utility knife, large popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree, star beads from Dollar Tree, and my hot glue gun. For this one, I started by cutting the canvas off of its frame using a utility knife. This utility knife that I'm using here is pretty dull, so I did have to go over the areas several times to be able to get it to cut through the canvas all the way. So if you're going to be doing this, make sure that you use a nice sharp knife. Once I had it all the way cut around, I just started pulling the canvas off of its frame, and then I did use some scissors to help me out in any of the areas that I missed. Because I didn't want to pull all of the staples out of the back side of the frame, I ended up just pulling the canvas through the staples. And since you're not going to see the back, I really wasn't worried about it too much. Once I had the canvas off, I then went in with my Craftsmart wood stain in the color brown in an old towel and just wiped that around the entire frame to give it a nice stained look. I really love this stain. I've been using it in multiple videos and I cannot recommend it more. Next, I'm painting 2 of these large popsicle sticks with the imperial colored paint, only I'm painting just half of the popsicle sticks with this color, and to get a nice precise line, I'm using a really small paintbrush because I'm going to be doing the other side of the popsicle stick with a different color. And I just placed both of the sticks like side by side next to each other so that I could get the lines exactly in the same place since they will be glued next to each other. Then I painted half of one of the large popsicle sticks with my plastered colored chalk paint, and again just lined it up with the other popsicle sticks that I had painted half with the red color so that all of the lines match up perfectly. Then I'm painting 1 whole popsicle stick with my plastered colored paint, and then 1 whole popsicle stick with my imperial colored paint. Now for the stick that was painted half with the plaster color, I'm painting the other half of that stick with the nautical colored paint. Then for the sticks that were painted half with the imperial color, I'm painting the other half of those with that nautical color as well. Next, I'm painting 6 of these mini star beads from Dollar Tree with my plastered colored chalk paint, and I'm using a really small paintbrush since the stars are so tiny. Now that I have everything all painted, I'm going to be assembling everything together. I'm placing hot glue on the back side of my wood frame, and the first stick I'm putting down, it's the red and blue one. Underneath the red and blue stick, I'm applying the one with the white and blue. And then after I have that one attached, I'm applying another red and blue one. You just want to make sure that all of your colors match up on the front. And then underneath that one, I'm applying the fully painted white stick. And then underneath the fully painted white one, I'm doing the fully painted red one. Since I want this piece to look aged and rustic, I'm applying some of my Java colored paint to a chip brush and just dry brushing that color over top of everything. And for the very last step, I'm applying a very small amount of hot glue on the back side of my painted stars, and then I'm attaching those stars to the blue painted popsicle sticks to have a total of 6 stars. Here is my flag sign all finished. I love how this one turned out. It was super easy to make, and what's even better is I created it using almost all Dollar Tree materials. Now moving into DIY number 2, I'll be making a firework stand sign. For this one, I used a tag-shaped sign that I picked up from Dollar Tree, a printed image that I created on my computer and printed onto wax paper, burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, cotton cord from Michaels, Waverly chalk paint and plaster, folk art chalk paint in Java, paintbrushes, jute, and my hot glue gun. I'm going to be using the back of this Dollar Tree sign as the front of my sign. No surprise there, I do that a lot in my videos, but I still really wanted to use these cute stars that were on the sign, so I'm just taking a butter knife and peeling them off. I wasn't worried about messing up this sign because you're really not going to see it anyway, but if you are worried about it, you could always sand over those areas and then just paint over them. I then flipped the sign over and started painting it with the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 coats of this paint to get everything covered up really nicely. Once that paint had completely dried, I then took a chip brush and my Java colored paint and I dry brushed that around all of the edges and then the front of the sign as well. I tried to stay going in the same motions up and down when I was doing the front of the sign. Next, I'm laying down my printed image on wax paper right in the center of my sign. Then I'm using an old card to press all of that ink down onto the front of my sign. Once I have it all pressed down with the card, I'm then using the end of a paintbrush to go over each and every letter to make sure that that ink is pressed down into the front of the sign really well. You want to make sure that you don't move the wax paper around at all because it will smudge that ink. I do have a link to this image in the description box below in case you guys want to use this image for any of your upcoming projects. After that ink is all pressed in, I then just simply peel off the wax paper. I'm now cutting down a piece of this burlap ribbon so that it will fit along the very front of my sign. And yes, I'm using my son's kid scissors because during crafting, for some reason, I always lose things and I could not find my scissors, so I just grabbed his. And to make the burlap ribbon a little bit thinner, I just cut off the 2 sides. Then I'm attaching the 2 ends of the ribbon along the back side of the sign using some hot glue. Next, I'm dry brushing some of this Java colored paint on top of the 3 stars that I popped off the front of the sign in the beginning of the video. Once I had the Java colored on, then I decided to paint some of my plastered color paint on all 3 stars. And then just for a little pop of color, I dry brushed my nautical color paint on the stars as well. I was going to leave the burlap ribbon as is, but then decided a piece of this cotton cord would be really cute centered over top of it. So I just cut that piece down to size and then I'm hot gluing the ends of the cotton cord along the back side of the sign. Next, I'm attaching all 3 of my stars. I placed hot glue along the back side of each star and then pressed them down over top of the cotton cord. Now they are not going to sit exactly flat on the cotton cord, but that doesn't really bother me. To add a little bit more detail to my sign, I'm adding some jute around the hole that was already in the sign originally. And to do that, I'm placing hot glue on the actual sign and then just sticking down the jute over top in a circle. And I went around it 3 different times and then just cut off the excess jute and glued the end piece down. And for the last step, I took 2 pieces of jute, strung them through the hole of the sign, and then made a knot on the ends of those pieces of jute. This is the fireworks stand sign all finished. I love the rustic look of this, and again, I was able to create it using almost all Dollar Tree products. Now for the third and final DIY for today, I'll be making a USA sign. For this one, I used a USA sign from Dollar Tree. I also used these USA banner sign from Dollar Tree. Dowel rods, 2 of them at 12 inches and 2 of them at 6.5 inches long. Waverly chalk paint in plaster. Folk art chalk paint in Imperial, Nautical, and also in the color Java. Paintbrushes. Craftsmart wood stain in brown. Painter's tape. Cotton cord. Sandpaper. A utility knife, and my hot glue gun. For this project, I started by cutting off the jute hanger that was already originally on the sign, and then since again I'm using the back side of the sign for the front of my sign, I peeled off that sticker and then just sanded off any of that sticky residue until I had a nice clean surface. I'm going to need to cut off some of my sign so that it will fit the size of my dowel rods. So I'm holding the 12-inch rod at the top where I want to cut all of the excess off, and I just marked that with a pen. Then I'm holding the 6.5-inch rod on the side, marking off exactly where I'm going to want to cut all of that excess off. To cut it off, I'm going to be using a utility knife. I'm just holding a ruler right on the line so that I can stay in place and not move around when I'm cutting with my utility knife. I feel that that helps me stay in a straight line. And once I had the board cut almost all the way through, I then bended the board back and forth. And then because it had more of a paper on the front, I just flipped the sign over and cut that off. And then used my utility knife to cut any of the rough edges that were still left over. It's best to make sure that you're using a really sharp knife. Again, mine was pretty dull, so some of my cuts could have been a little bit better. And then I'm just continuing that step for the other part that I marked off that I needed to cut. I'm just using my utility knife, cutting off in that line that I'd already marked, bending it back and forth once it's almost cut all the way through, and then just cutting off any of the excess paper that was on the front. Next, I'm painting the entire front side of my sign with my folk art chalk paint in the color Imperial, and I did only have to do one coat of this paint. Once that paint has completely dried, I then took a chip brush and my plaster color chalk paint and dry brushed that over top of my sign to give it a rustic look. Next, I'm applying my Craftsmart wood stain in the color brown over top of all 4 of my dowels, and to apply it I used an old towel and I only had to go over them one time with the stain. Now I'm taking apart this USA banner that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I just cut the burlap off and then peeled it off of each letter. It was attached with some glue and it really wasn't on there very good, so I was able to just peel all that glue and burlap off really quickly. For the letter U, I'm able to just flip it over and use the back side instead of trying to get all of that glitter off of the front, but I did take some sandpaper and go over all of the edges of the U because they were a little rough. Now, for the S and the A, obviously I can't just flip them over because it changes the way that the letters go. So I'm using some sandpaper to sand all of the glitter that's on the letters off. I was going to use Goo Gone, but I'm not sure what I did with mine, so I just used some sandpaper. If you do have Goo Gone, it is going to work a lot better than having to sand off all of the glitter. And I sanded off all of the glitter on the letter A as well. For the letter U, I'm painting it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I did do 2 coats of this paint. Then for the letter S, I still wanted to have the stripes that were originally on it, so I used some painter's tape to mark off where I'm going to be painting my stripes. And then I painted the Imperial color in between all of the pieces of tape. But when I was pulling the tape off, it started to peel some of the backing that was originally on the S, and it actually started coming up really easy, so I just finished peeling it off, sanded anything that I couldn't peel off so that the letter was completely blank. Now that I have the surface all cleaned up again, I can start over. I'm placing a piece of painter's tape right in the center of the S and then placing 2 other pieces on each side of that center piece, and then I'm painting the red color in all of the open spaces. After the paint was all dry, I then peeled off the tape, and as you can see here, some of the backing still peeled off. So I had to touch up the paint a little bit with that same color paint. I don't recommend using these Dollar Tree letters if you are going to be repainting them. If you're not going to repaint them, then that's fine. But if you are, I would just recommend getting some from your local craft store or Walmart to use. In the open spaces between all of the red color, I then painted those with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And to make sure I get nice precise lines against the red paint, I used a really small paintbrush. Now I'm moving on to my letter A, and I'm painting 1 coat of this nautical color chalk paint over top. And to stick with the rustic farmhouse look that I have going on all 3 of my projects today, I'm using some of my Java color chalk paint and my Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I'm dry brushing that color over top of all of my letters, mainly focusing on the ones that have the white. And then for the S that has the red color on it, I'm using a chip brush and that plaster color paint and painting over all of the red areas. And then on my A that's painted blue, I'm painting some of this plaster color paint once again over top of it, mainly focusing around the edges, and it's going to give it almost like it has a chipped paint effect. Next, it's time to assemble my sign. I'm placing hot glue on the back of one of my 6.5-inch dowel rods and placing it on the side of my sign. Then I'm doing the same thing with the 12-inch rod, only I'm placing it on the top side, and then just continuing that step for the other side dowel rod and then the bottom dowel rod. I'm then placing my letters USA right in the center of my sign and just getting them exactly where I want them before I start gluing them down. I'm placing hot glue on the back side of each letter and then just pressing them back into place. I really didn't like the space between my dowel rods and the side of my sign. I did not like the way that that looked, and I wanted to cover it up. So I'm using some of this cotton cord. I just measured it around each side of the sign, cut it down, and then hot glued it onto the side of my sign. I really ended up loving the way that the cotton cord looked next to the dowel rods. I originally hadn't planned for it to be there, but then again, most of my DIYs never go as planned. And then for the hanger, I'm using 2 pieces of this cotton cord. Once again, I just cut those 2 pieces down to the size that I wanted my hanger to be. And then I hot glued each end of the cotton cord down on the back side of my sign. Here is my USA sign all finished. This one gave me a little bit of trouble, but I really love how it turned out. If you're going to be using this sign outside, be sure to give it a couple coats of protectant sealant. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. And I would love to hear in the comments which DIY from today was your favorite. Thank you so much for watching.